equal money and animals, bugs and plants, essentially the other living things on earth. And there's going to have to be many changes in the way the human race deal with the other inhabitants on earth, purely because other inhabitants on earth are clearly equal in every way. They have a language, they have a interconnectedness, and they have a right to be on earth, and they have intelligence, they have design, and as such have equal rights to planet Earth. Therefore, the human system must incorporate them and protect their rights in all ways. Therefore, in the most humane way, one must find solutions on how all living things on earth coexist. Obviously, all parts have their needs and their connectedness, and many parts exist because they were created as a side effect from the human system, and may cease to exist once there is a system of equality on earth. They were purely part of a connectedness that was connected to the current way that the human exists. If we start looking at one of the biggest single problems on earth, one must look at the animal first, because the relationship between the human and the animals stretch historically through a very long time, and the two have been connected in many different ways. And as such, the human would not be here in its current condition if it wasn't for the animals throughout history, and what the animals stood for and died for. Currently, the populations of animals, specifically the domesticated animals, which started that, is at very high levels because they are worth money. They are not purely existing as a part of the population of Earth. They are existing as a part of the economic system on Earth, within which people are feeding their families, calculating their wealth, and use the domesticated animal as a form of cultural control. The human race itself, is not designed to eat meat in the way that it comes from the animal. There are ways that meat can be processed that could be beneficial to the human, and that has been used traditionally as a way to preserve meat. The question, though, is at what stage the animal becomes part of the diet of the human. In equality, we will propose that the animal only become part of the diet of the human at death, whether it is through accident or circumstance or age, and that such animals then would be taken to a processing plant where the meat would be processed into various delicatessen that will have a long shelf life, so to speak. Remember, shelf life within process of equality would be the preservation of food to support most in the best way possible. That would mean, obviously, if one approached the point of the animal being only part of the food chain at the stage of death or accident without possibility of correction or circumstance, and where the meat obviously is very thoroughly investigated to make sure that there is no transfer of any form of biological agent that could harm the human, then they will have to go through a stage where the population of animals domesticated specifically for meat and food production in the world will have to be reduced substantially. One of the points where the animal will play a role still is in the sharing of food. And the sharing of food would mean in the sharing of milk, for instance. The human will provide the service for the animal of ensuring that there is food and water, and as the shared responsibility or the way of coexistence, the human will be allowed to use part of the milk produced by the animal. The same with other animals that is producing, for instance, eggs. One will be able to benefit from the relationship of coexistence that exists in terms of food production. That's the same would be with trees that is producing fruit. The human is part of the upkeep, the sharing of responsibility with nature to make sure that the food production is universal across the earth for all humans and for all beings that require fruit. In the case of meat, though, it will be a situation where the points will be identified. For instance, milk, eggs, they are all necessary nutrition or vital nutrition or effective nutrition for the human that can be used, and based on the interconnected level of responsibility that exists between the human and the animal, where the human take responsibility for food, housing, cleaning, all kinds of considerations. Obviously, within this context, that those things that are called pests, that would be living off the animal, that only exist because there has been no being that was helping, those will be available to, or they will be removed from existence through the interaction, through the support that the human is giving the animal. The pest being purely something that was standing in the place of the human and lived as a coexistence with the animal because there was no other way, or that was feeding off the animal like a parasite, purely representing the human in the current system, and therefore it was like a little bloodsucker on the animal, sucking the animal from its life force for no particular reason at all, just like the human is currently doing in its current economic system. Obviously all of those points will be removed. We have tested this out on the farm extensively. When we first got here, there was an extensive amount of parasites, and through intervention we have virtually now removed most of the parasites from the cycle, and that obviously makes no difference to any of the animals or the nature or the situation, except that it makes the existence of the animal and the human more harmonious, and there is less harm that happen, and less disease. The existence of the particular parasite is no longer relevant, just like the profit would be no longer relevant in an equality system, because it's simply like a parasite that sucks a life of the weak that can do nothing about it. So in that, the parasite represents, in essence, the parasitic nature of the human ego, and as such will be eradicated because it only exists because the human didn't take its responsibility as custodian on earth. Obviously, the relationship between animal and human will be one of respect, of custodianship, where it will become quite personal. It will become a reflection of definition and will be seen as such, as part of the existence of the human and part of responsibility. And there will be oversight. The oversight would be love thy neighbor, because each one will be responsible for their own relationship with their animals, and also to oversee the relationships between humans and animals, that is their neighbors, to make sure that any human that develop any form of mental condition that would harm other beings can be identified immediately to get help. And that would be the point of love thy neighbor. Everyone will be jointly responsible, not only for the direct custodianship, but also to oversee their neighbors in their custodianship. And in that way, abuse would be prevented, and responsibility will be taken, and one will understand that any form of abuse that exists is the result of a mental disposition that requires intervention. And such intervention would be either through education or through a medical, psychological intervention in cases where a diet, for instance, is not effective, and due to a certain chemical not being effective within the production of the human, causing the human to act in ways that is abusive to animals or other humans or to the earth. So love thy neighbor itself would be very effective in assisting in the prevention of abuse. Such things as vegan, vegetarian, carnivore, and all of those kind of relationships will not exist as any form of belief or faith. What one eat will be researched and be direct what is best for the physical body, not what is best for the ego. The ego will have no say in what is best, and the actual science will indicate what the body must have according to its current design. In time, obviously, our research will be focused on finding ways to purify, design, effectively interconnect the human physical design with, in the context of the earth, and a system of equality and custodianship, and thus, in time, the requirement for the physical body in terms of what it needs to eat will change. But initially, decisions will be made according to the actual physical measurement of what is best for the body. And the mind will have no say in that, because the principle of equality is between the physical, and the mind, or the ego, the personality, is as such a disease that will be managed if necessary, and will not be allowed to spew out and come out and abuse and to try and dominate that which it doesn't understand at all. If you look at the current world system, economically, socially, and so on, and you look, for instance, at the revolution in Egypt, you'll see that the complete existence of that revolution is one of the ego, not of the physical, and therefore it's as such worthless. You will not see any consideration given to any other part of the living things on earth, because the personality cannot. The personality lives in constant fear of its existence. It is extremely limited. It has no understanding of the physical God, so to speak, physical system that is here existing long before the human race came about or evolved into a personality cult. So, these kind of things will be managed extremely well through time. Obviously, we are looking now, understanding with the equal money system with an integration or implementation phase that will take approximately 20 years. We are already busy with the training of it within the context of the Desteni I process, and eventually, as it becomes part of the political agenda and people start to understand the full context of the equal money solution and the equal life solution, things will start changing on earth, and one will very clearly be able to see who is in fact compassionate, benevolent, divine, pure, here as the physical, and who has been able to set themselves free from their possessed nature, which is the personality cults that has been existing, that is the egos that has been existing, and who is truly worthy to be custodians of every living thing on earth. And this will show with great clarity and the superiority of that which is truly eternal, which is the physical, will show in its magnificence as it already exists, yet as Egypt is showing, and other forms of revolutions, and I mean the rest of the world in terms of the economic system and the political systems, education systems, and way the human race is living as a personality only, as a totally limited, invisible thing, protecting its so-called right to freedom, to abuse, and right to apparent choice, and it's protecting its so-called right. That's a bird flying, practicing its wings. The apparent right to be dominant, while none of these things are actually relevant. Obviously, the great point, or the point that will have to be considered, and which will be researched extensively and proven, and the ways that it's possible to be proven, which is like the equality equation, and the results of ages of information gathering, direct investigation and so on, is whether the idea that the personality cult, the ego, actually will survive death. The ridiculousness of that in itself is beyond measure, that one can base your complete existence on the idea that that which is temporary can exist for eternity. The personality is created specifically at this stage by the environment, the parents, the education, knowledge specifically is creating the personality to interact within a system that only consider the personality and nothing of the physical. Not even considering the human, because the human in who the human really is actually a physical being, a physical body that is not being considered by the personality at all. Personality has no specific idea on how the physical actually functions, and that all will be taken in account in an equality equation, and the personality itself will be treated as what it is, a disease that infects and possesses, and in fact cause the physical to lose its effective functionality and eventually kills the physical, it is a parasite that will be taken out as it should. Currently, obviously, the parasite is virtually in total control of all human beings, so this will be an interesting experience as we slowly but surely heal ourselves from this disease that has justified its existence in so many ways that it is virtually impossible to see what is illusion and what's real, and where many has been taken over completely by the parasite, which then claim that the physical is illusion and that the parasitic reality is reality. Fascinating, isn't it? It's an amazing thing that has happened on Earth, that the parasite has been able to get to such an extent, living off that which is in fact alive, and so slowly but surely creating an illusionary reality, while the actual reality is coexisting right here. Fascinating, eh? Anyway, some other pointers here, as we have indicated, is obviously some of the points with the animals, then also in terms of, for instance, fruits and the bugs that eat from the fruits. The equal labor system will have facilities available worldwide where one will be able to create the necessary environment within which fruit will be produced according to the requirements of the human race, the animals and the bugs. Some of the food in terms of the bugs will be available openly, others will be in a controlled zone to optimize production. That is part of the ability of the human, is to direct food production according to requirements. Obviously, what is required in the world will be well documented and researched, and every single human being, every single animal will be accounted for, and accordingly food will be produced either as fresh or preserved as it's required, and will be logistically placed in all countries around the world for distribution effectively. All of this obviously bringing about a fascinating thing, is that we estimate up to 98% of all the resources that is currently used in the world is in fact abuse of the parasites. The parasites are simply producing resource, taking resource as it competes for dominance. It's like a form of a virus that competes for dominance, and it's using a system like the current capitalistic or economic or consumeristic system to compete for dominance. All these parasitic possessions, egos, will obviously be no more, and what will happen is that the human race will live all equally as millionaires and be in a position to truly take care of the animals in its custodianship. And therefore there will be really a form of utopia or heaven, and very few goods will need to be created, as there is no need for satisfying a parasitic ego, and it is simply based on the functional, effective living on Earth, based on the interconnectedness and the relationships that will be existing between the human and human as neighbors, and human and animal as neighbors, and human and plant as neighbors, and human and bug as neighbors, spider, you name it. There will be a relationship, there will be a knowing of each other, there will be a consideration. Obviously much of this will be also take time, as trust must be built. It has been totally destroyed by the parasitic ego that took over and possessed all the human bodies on Earth, and made the existence of life itself virtually impossible, so that one ended up with a whole reality where there are only parasites and no living things. That will obviously change, and the production of food will be accordingly adjusted into ways of equality that is best for all. Food and goods will be available to all equally according to need, and there will be very specific research done as to what is required for each physical body, and abuse of the body will not be allowed. So that would mean obesity and bulimia, all kinds of forms of abuse that was the result of the parasitic ego will actually come to an end, and the person will be managed. If you have a possessed ego that is trying to take dominance over the physical, then you will be taken to a point where you can be assisted, and there will be very specific things. Initially there will be a lot of that, but eventually there will be very seldom such kind of behavior, such kind of possession, such kind of diseases, viruses that break out and take over the physical. In essence, the parasitic ego acts like a virus, but it is a parasite that is invisible. It is a parasite that can shapeshift. It takes on various forms. It can present itself. It's intelligent. The ego is a parasite that can reason. It can manipulate. It takes on a complete illusionary idea of a dominant species when it is not a species as such. The species is actually the physical body, and the parasite takes over all the functionalities that would normally have been the development of the physical body as a being, and therefore the being do not develop at all, and is suppressed completely by the parasite, and are eventually not even aware that it actually exists, because only the parasite or the ego exists. So that is one of the important contexts that will be realized by all the beings that still have a little bit of light left. Also, that the parasitic egos are able to generate a form of light that is completely blinding, and that they are using the flow of energy, which is called feeling, to manipulate and abuse in extensive ways without actually considering what is real on earth. It's all a parasitic illusion. Therefore, it's very important to investigate what we are saying within the context of the equal money, equal life process, and what really will happen on earth once we have the human race return to planet Earth. Now, obviously, as we've indicated, that your bugs, and I mean there are many, many bugs existing on Earth. They have various points, some of it relevant, some not relevant. They're all depending on whether they were an outflow of the influence of the parasites, the ego on Earth, or whether they are in fact coexisting with the physical. Those that came about through parasitic ego, those bugs will disappear, as we've indicated. We have found already on the farm, and those that's beneficial and that we've also found on the farm would actually emerge. We had, for instance, certain types of weeds taking over, and we used to have to take them out by hand. But this year, this season, a bug emerged that has been taking care of this weed, and that's been living of it. And our being here has already started changing the very fabric of reality. So, fascinating times ahead. The Equal Money book will truly question everything you've ever considered real. And obviously those of you that are parasitic egos, let me just share with you, this is your last life. You will no longer possess the physical, you will no longer abuse, you will no longer have a right to life. You have just been an illusionary, parasitic energetic entity that has managed to get away with much, because no one was aware of your true nature. You are not human, you are ego. You are not life, you are parasite. And therefore, this is it. And slowly but surely we are here to first assist those that identify their parasitic possessors, to help them get rid of these parasites. You can also call them demons, because that's really what the human race has become. It's demons, and demons are not physical, they are mind, they are energy, they are emotion, they are feeling. That is what demons are. They have obviously created as much protection as they possibly can. These parasites try and stay in power, and they will probably try and use it. But limited as they are, they will end up being where they should be, non-existent, as an illusion, having no right to life. We continue within the context of the let's put it this way. Within the next few months, the Equal Money book will be out, and much of what has been discussed in this particular interview is, obviously, this is part of the Equal Money book. It's being dictated. Unless you can live it directly, it's not something that's thought up. It's a living reality. I don't sit and think it up. I live it. And therefore I simply dictate the Equality book, or the Equal Money book. There is no notes. There is no research. Because it's who I am. And it's who you truly are as well. Once you get rid of your parasitic ego, you are something that is of such magnificence that it is incredible. And so is everything else on earth, all the living things here, beyond amazing. Heaven is truly actually on earth. So when the Equal Money book is being released, there will be a pre-release with the first few thousand copies being exclusive, which will include the complete transcription, means the recordings of the book as I dictate the book, as well as a hard copy of it, numbered as a collector's item. So you will be able to place your early orders at the Desteni website and the Equal Money websites, and you'll be able to study equality, equal money, and equal life and all its facets. Initially, it'll be a smaller group that work with it, because the extent of the parasitic ego possession is dominating the earth in every way. Fortunately, with cutting the strings of heaven controlling, and remember, heaven was simply that which was created by the parasitic ego to create its own infinite existence. It was not actually heaven. Heaven is on earth. Heaven is not somewhere else, but for a parasite, it had to misdirect the real being into a belief that there is something else, so that the real being never took care of what is here on earth. So the parasitic ego took over completely, with the whole illusion that apparently the ego will continue as the soul after death, which isn't. The soul is just the parasitic ego's version of eternity. It's not really real. That's why you have so limited information on earth, because information has been managed, controlled, abused, and placed into containment so that nobody knows what is really real, and therefore the beings within the physical has lost all hope and has retracted themselves from reality, and virtually only parasitic egos remained. So invest in the book. The book will be based on what is necessary to bring about heaven on earth and equal money and equal life system, and explain in detail how we will be able to manage all of this. And obviously, the parasitic egos will scream and shout and will call us evil, because that's what they've been programming the physical beings to believe, that there is some evil. The only evil that there is the parasitic ego, which is personality, and all beliefs and faiths and energies and all its variations that it exists as multidimensions. All of the multidimensions of the mind, all of the so-called light, love and beautiful pictures are all part of the parasitic ego. All the gurus, all the masters, all the love beings, all the meditators, all of those that has used knowledge and energy to create a dominance and separating life from itself and creating an illusionary reality that is only existent within the parasitic ego. All of those will scream evil. You can scream as you like. It is the end. It's the time of your plucking. You will not continue. This is your last life. Your heavens no more exist. What exists is the physical. And we're here to help and support those that want to throw off the burden of these parasitic ego personalities once and for all. And we'll do everything possible to help you. Join us. Destiny. Equal money. Equal life. This is the end and the beginning.